To win his malpractice hearing, Jimmy McGill has to cross-examine his older brother Chuck and invalidate a medical condition that leaves no physical marks. On the stand, Chuck describes his symptoms with absolute certainty. He details a tightness in his chest, difficulty breathing, and a burning pain that spreads everywhere whenever he is exposed to an electrical current. This creates an incredibly difficult legal hurdle. Because Chuck genuinely feels the discomfort, his subjective reality is airtight. You cannot disprove a feeling with a standard medical scan, and you cannot logic someone out of a pain they are actively experiencing. Jimmy knows that simply arguing his brother is mentally ill will not be enough for the bar committee. He has to build a scenario where Chuck empirically disproves his own claims in real time. Jimmy's strategy relies on using Chuck's greatest asset, his hyper-rational, rigid intellect, against his own physical senses. The trap starts with Jimmy playing the fool. By feigning ignorance, he gets Chuck to confidently dictate the exact parameters of his condition for the official court record. Jimmy points out the illuminated exit signs in the back of the courtroom. Chuck readily dismisses them, explaining that they draw very little current and are positioned far away from the witness stand. This diagram demonstrates the inverse square law. It maps out how energy waves drop exponentially with distance. Jimmy distills this concept into a strict binary rule. Distance means safety, but close proximity means undeniable pain. Then comes the anchoring question. Jimmy asks if Chuck would feel the current from a small power source, like a watch battery, if it were placed right next to his skin. Chuck confidently agrees that he would. Chuck has established a clear, unfalsifiable baseline for his condition under oath. He cannot alter the rules of his sensitivity now without contradicting his own testimony. With the parameters set, Jimmy launches his first tactical strike. He suddenly pulls his cell phone out of his pocket to intentionally provoke his brother. Chuck immediately seizes on this. He reacts with smug superiority, believing he has caught Jimmy violating the committee's strict rule against electronics in the hearing room. But Jimmy opens the back of the phone to reveal an empty compartment. He had already removed the battery. This is a calculated misdirection. By giving Chuck a brief, false sense of intellectual victory, Jimmy effectively lowers his brother's mental defenses. As Chuck's attention is fixed on the empty phone, Jimmy redirects the room. He asks his brother to reach into his own breast pocket. Chuck reaches inside his tailored suit jacket and extracts a fully charged cell phone battery. How did it get there? Earlier, an associate intentionally bumped into Chuck in the stairwell, smoothly slipping the battery into his pocket during the collision. The timeline provides the fatal blow. Jimmy proves to the committee that Chuck sat with a live battery pressed directly against his chest for 1 hour and 43 minutes without experiencing a single symptom. The physical evidence is undeniable. Chuck's subjective claims of burning pain are completely dismantled by a piece of objective reality. The atmosphere in the room shifts instantly. Chuck's intellectual shield is entirely shattered, leaving the raw, underlying paranoia exposed to the committee. Now stripped of his rational, scientific defenses, Chuck rapidly pivots. He launches into a highly emotional, unprompted rant. He fixates on a past incident where he claims Jimmy altered the address on legal documents, obsessing over the specific number, 1216. To validate his memory, Chuck anchors the number 1216 to the Magna Carta. His fracturing mind desperately clings to rigid, historical milestones in an attempt to maintain order. The rant spirals into bizarre territory for a formal competency hearing. He airs decades-old grievances, screaming about defecating through a sunroof and stealing from the cash drawer. The deeper truth surfaces. Chuck's supposed allergy to electricity is actually a psychosomatic reaction to Jimmy's existence and his success as a lawyer. The physical pain Chuck felt was a manifestation of his lifelong resentment and an overwhelming, desperate need to maintain an intellectual and moral high ground over his brother. Jimmy executed a flawless strategic trap to win his case, but securing that absolute courtroom victory required him to publicly, permanently break his brother's mind.